Welcome back to the Mackem in the Middle podcast after another Sunderland game. Last 5 we are up to now. Of course, this was the 5th, 4 to go after this. A 2-1 win at home to Birmingham, a game that certainly had it all, and we'll get through everything that happened during the game. And once again, at this point of the season, what that result and goal difference does to the table, which is very interesting at this point. But first and foremost, John, home games were the thing that we pointed out were an issue. And obviously the majority of the games that we have left are at home. Next one's Huddersfield, and I think Watford might be the last home game, if I'm not mistaken. Have to win the home games if we want any chance of getting into the playoffs. And so far, it is 1 from 1.
Yeah, that's all you can do. It's been highlighted, during the week. I think Mowbray's gone through it. And obviously we all know it's not been good enough. So to start off your mini run, the last 5 games, to start off with a win is, it's fantastic. It's not all about the performance. Obviously we'll get into that. It's results, end of the season. And, I'm sure none of us are going to be talking about the 90-minute performance, barring the individual bits of quality that won us the game. But yeah, it stands us in good stead, for the next home game on Tuesday night.
Yeah. And like I say, we'll get onto the performance, but it is one of them. Well, it's pretty much near identical to the game that we had at home against Hull. Obviously, that one finished 4-4. And, after the last game, we looked at that one and said them 2 points that we dropped could cost us. They were 17th at the time when we played them, and I think they moved up slightly after that point. I'm not sure where they are now, and I think they've got a game either now at the time of recording or tonight against Blackburn. And in the same situation, Birmingham were 17th when we played them, and I think they are still 17th now. So it's not just a case of having to win the home games, it's a case of having to beat the teams at the bottom of the table if you want to go up the table yourself.
Yeah, of course it is. We know, I don't think it's a case of them being right in the relegation scrap. Obviously they're in and around it. And you've got to expect to come up against teams who are fighting for their life. They weren't a bad team, what we saw today, but you've still got to go out there and manage them. Obviously play your way, manage the game, and it's individual bits of quality like we saw are the difference in sort of 3 points or dropping 2 or even getting beat. So there are different tests all the time to come up against, and thankfully it's one again that we've managed to come through fairly well, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, on the performance, first half especially, and obviously there's a couple of goals in there that we'll get onto, but in general, the first half performance, one probably to be forgotten, really. Quite easily as well.
Yeah, I think you're going to get that in, end of the season. It is just, it's almost like a season or a half of football filler. It's something you're not really going to remember. Not a lot really happened. There was a few nice bits of play. We obviously got undone with the goal. I think when Danny Bart steps out and misses the tackle, you'd expect him to maybe take one for the team there and just bring the player down. But we get caught out, and that's, we all get drawn to the ball, and obviously, they open the scoring. So apart from that, and, Trey Hume obviously equalising just before half time, which always helps. The first half, obviously we know it's a results business, but yeah, the first half is, sort of best bet forgotten.
Yeah. Well, it was, like you say, it was Birmingham that did take the lead, and it's just very poor defending from Sunderland. And, it's probably easier to say this when you're not the one playing it, but it was a very simple situation to deal with, really. Chong, who had a very good game and caused trouble throughout, pretty much every time he got the ball, you knew what he was going to do. He was always going to try and cut in on his left. He did exactly that inside our box. I think it was Serkin goes in for a challenge. Obviously, Chong's cut back. Serkin's gone flying past him. And in the end, it's a simple pass into an open goal for Hall, I think it was in the end.
Yeah, that bit of quality you can maybe atone for. But what you can't atone for, I thought we just said it, Danny Bart obviously being drawn out, which you don't want. And normally then with a covering centre-back of Ballard or Luke O'Nien, would normally then sort of actively cover, behind there. But obviously Trey Hume, it's still fairly new to him. And I think there's 4 players around Trong when he's crossing. He's sort of, it's the easiest goal that Hall. I think it was Hall who scored. But yeah, it's the easiest tapping Hill 11 score. He hasn't scored since August. But yeah, it's one of those. You look at it, they'll say it's a really good goal from their perspective. Our perspective is, really, really poor. But it happens, and maybe we needed it a little bit just for kick up the arse, and thankfully it did work.
It did, because just before half-time, Sunderland got the equaliser, made it 1-1. It was Trey Hume, who I think, is that his first goal since he signed?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
I think it is. I can't recall another one that he scored, but that was his first goal. And to be honest, I didn't actually know who scored it at the time. I think it was from corner. Pritchard whips it in. I'm not sure who it was that knocked it on. It ends up at Trey Hume at the back post, and similar to the one that Hall scored for Birmingham. It's a very simple finish into an empty net, and that is the goal that made all the difference, really, because Birmingham, if they go in at 1-0, they were already happy to sit back, play for a point, time waste, go down with injuries at 0-0. They took the lead. They were going to do it even more, and in the second half, it would have been twice as bad. So for Sunderland to get that goal at that time when they did is probably the most important part of this game.
Yeah, 100%. Because you're going to get, obviously, frostiness sort of at half time, and a bit of a reaction from the crowd, and people going on the ref and those types of things. So yeah, I think that's a perfect time to score. If you're 1-0 down, it's the perfect time to score. You get in, you can regroup, and then we sort of build on that. But it was, Pritchard puts 2 hands up, and I was thinking, well, we must have a bit of a plan here, and it's lobbed well over the back post to Danny Bart, who then heads it. 2 players get drawn in, and Patrick Roberts flicks it across the goal for Trey Hume to head it home. So to be fair, it was, I'd say it's about time, because I think it might be our first proper corner, or only our second, sort of set piece goal. So it's about time one of those, actually worked and didn't hit the first man. But yeah, on terms of scoring at that time, perfect. It kills them a little bit. They got to think, do we come in? Do we come out second half and have a go? Do we sit tight? And obviously, if teams do sit tight, obviously they know with the players we got, they are in a bit of trouble. So yeah, perfect time to score.
Yeah, and the second half, for probably the first kind of 10-15 minutes, followed a similar pattern in which the 3 players that saw the ball the most were, Trey Hume, Danny Bart, and Anthony Patterson. We couldn't really break Birmingham down. And, if you look at the stats, you can see why our home form has probably struggled a lot this season. 623 passes we made today compared to Birmingham's 285, less than half of what we did, 68% possession we had. But for large parts of that game, I think the first kind of 10 minutes of the game, Sunderland had a few chances and got in behind. But after that, up until, realistically, the goal that ended up winning the game, which we'll get onto, Sunderland had a lot of possession again without really threatening Birmingham.
Yeah, that's true. But I think maybe if you're looking back on the whole game, and I think we said it, we didn't really control it that well during the game. You've got to take the sting out sometimes, because at times it was very much like a basketball game, sort of back and forth. They were attacking, we were attacking, and those are the games that are so open. You don't want them like the whole game. You want to be able to manage. So it might be frustrating on the eye to watch. I think at certain points in the game, especially when it's getting like a bit erratic, you just need to put your foot on the ball. And I don't mind if the centre backs are doing that, with the goalkeeper for sort of 10, 15 minutes, bit of a recharge, bit of a just holding pattern, and we know when we get the chances, we can spring them quickly. So it was maybe a thing that they've picked up on, like we're saying from the whole game, which was just so open for 90 minutes. And the games can't be that open, because Championship teams who have been here for a long time, regardless of whether they're flirting with relegation or wherever, will always be able to create chances. So you have to, you do have to manage those games. So for me, it's one of those, you have to say sort of, fair play, and because the press was not bad, to be fair. With getting out wasn't the best, but for me, I can take those, when we just take the sting out of the game for the time being, to sort of recharge and go again.
Yeah. And obviously we did make a few changes around the 60-minute mark. Luke O'Nien came on for Lyndon Gooch, and it was kind of a reshuffle. Hume, I'm not entirely sure how they actually lined up, because it was kind of like a back 3 out of possession. Sorry, back 3 in possession, back 4 out of possession. Luke O'Nien came on for Gooch and Gelhardt for Michu. And they are obviously we made a few more changes after that, but they were the two changes that completely changed the game in Sunderland's favour, especially Gelhardt, who's had a lot of criticism since he signed, and I think a lot of it is probably warranted because, in terms of what his role in the team was earlier in the season, when he first signed, was just to score goals, and he wasn't doing that. I think Mowbray's kind of realised that he's not really going to be that player, and the last few games that he has featured in, he has played in much kind of like a false nine position, and he thrived in it, not just against Hull, but again today.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I think if I was being slightly critical, I'd want to see his press a little bit more getting across the pitch. If he's only doing sort of half an hour, 25 minutes, I think he's probably still got a little bit more to give. But to be fair, he obviously did his best. If he's the only guy up there pressing, then the press is a frustrating one because they'll just sort of knock it around him and then they're out. So that's probably me just being a little bit critical. But yeah, certainly recent weeks, it's been a lot better. I think a goal against Hull has obviously helped, and maybe not starting, so he doesn't feel the pressure to have to start games and get us sort of on top. Maybe we've taken the pressure off him there, and if you're going on to the other one, Luca 9, I think he gives us a sort of an energy back there. It's almost like a sitting midfielder, sort of in at the back. Obviously, we know he's solid defensively, but today, just bringing the ball out, switching the play, it's the only frustrating thing for me maybe was, like we were saying, Chong was getting a lot of the ball and you knew what he was going to do, and he's always going to try and take Cirkin on. Cirkin's on the booking. I can't see why we haven't switched Gooch to left back, and brought Luke 09 on. Then I thought it would have been earlier because you just knew something would happen. But that's. I definitely said that at the time, but it's just one of those. Maybe the management staff will maybe think about that because we know Cirkin loves a bit of a tackle. And to be fair, Chong was, he had a decent game. To be fair,
he did. But 15 minutes to go, Sunderland did get a goal that proved to be the winner in the end, albeit it was a little bit tight after that. And it was probably one of the first times that Sunderland tried to switch the play. Like I say, a lot of the time during the game, Sunderland had a lot of possession. Close possession, little triangles here and there, not really getting anywhere with it. But for the first time, probably I could actually remember in the game, Jack Clarke gets the ball, he switched it to Ahmad, and the credit will go to Ahmad for the goal, and rightfully so, because it is a very good finish that we'll talk about. But the pass from Clarke originally will go under the radar, but that is an outstanding pass and outstanding switch of play.
Yeah, it's fantastic. To be fair, it's great vision and execution. I think Mowbray has said that can we switch to play really, really quickly, because obviously as soon as Clarke gets the ball, there's normally two men on him, and he's not going to be able to beat those every time. So if we've got players running through the middle, that then does free up whoever is out wide. And we know it doesn't matter if it's Roberts there or Ahmad, they've got the quality. And you just want to see a bit more directness. Sometimes it's a bit, we're sort of blind alleys maybe sometimes, but the directness, I think, because I think he takes out like 3 players on the turn.
Yeah,
manages to go past another player in the box and then sort of slot it in the bottom corner. So, if we know how good Ahmad is, you've mainly got to get the ball to him. And it's that individual skill was, ultimately won us the game. And, it all comes from Jack Clarke. And to be fair, that is the way we do play. Can we switch it? Can we get it across? And vice versa. You'd like to see it obviously the other way. If, when Clarke's free out wide, that is, one of our main attacking threats. So it's nice to see it come to fruition.
Yeah. And it's very similar to the goal that Ahmad actually scored in the away fixture against Birmingham. He's on the right-hand side of the box. Somehow, some way, the Birmingham defenders let him in and let him cut in on his left. That's hard to say. Don't try that fast. He cuts in on his left, beats 1, beats 2, puts it in the bottom corner, and I mean, we'll get onto the table and where Sunderland could potentially be next season. But the chances of us seeing Ahmad in a Sunderland shirt after this season, after what he's done for us this season, is very minimal. And you can see why. And you can see why Man United have paid the money for him that they have.
Yeah, of course. And it's, it's probably taken him a while to find the right step for him. Obviously went to Rangers, didn't by all accounts didn't really work there. And now, I mean, I watch a lot of football, and I watch a lot of Man United games, and I wouldn't have said, he'd look out of place there. He's going to get a lot more time on the ball. He's going to have a lot more sort of better quality around him, although not much more, but depending on who they bring in. And if they could play that quick, intricate football, you imagine him with sort of Bruno Fernandes and Eriksen and the vision that they have. It's because they're gonna have to have a big clear out, obviously, in the summer, and there's no point them spending 40 odd million or how much ever he's gonna cost eventually. If they're not going to give him a chance. But yeah, just a fantastic player, and he's probably the one or there's probably three in the squad who I think today he had four men on him, and he still used to come out sort of skipping around with the ball, and you're just like, this guy is just different level. And I think that's ultimately the thing that we're going to say, well, he's obviously not going to be a bar in maybe, and that I say a miracle if things come together, and that'll be us sneaking into the playoffs, getting promoted. Then I think Man United may then think we could let him back to Sunderland and keep on his progression. Maybe I still think they'll want him back, but maybe they'll say, well, you can have another Premier League loan if with the way Sunderland are playing. But I think that is a massive long shot, and I don't hold any hope. And it's just another one to add to the list of loan players that you just you absolutely fall in love with, that you shouldn't, but ultimately you do because of how good they've been for you and your club.
Another French-speaking one as well.
Yeah, another one, yeah.
But Sunderland do what Sunderland always do, and you think at 2-1, the way Birmingham were playing, albeit they had a few chances and got forward here and there, 2-1 was looking fairly safe, I think most people were thinking. But Sunderland do what they like to do and made it harder for themselves and made it a lot more anxious, I suppose, for the last 12 minutes or so it was, because just 3 minutes after Sunderland took the lead, I think subs were getting ready. I think Ekwa was going to come on pretty much, straight after that goal. Birmingham take the kick off. The ball eventually falls to Chong, who puts the ball past Serkin. Serkin blocks him off, takes a whack in the face for it as well. And it's a second yellow card, it's a red card, and Sunderland are down to 10. And there's a few people debating whether it's a foul, whether it's a second yellow, but I don't think there's too much to really complain about with that one.
Well, I think it's one of them, and if me and you are going for the ball and you knock the ball past me, is it in my remit to move out the way? Probably not. But ultimately, we know in this day and age that is you get a free kick for that. You get a free kick for a lot less. In this day and age, and there's probably a few frustrations there. Serkin should know that he's on a booking. I thought Chong would have taken him on a little bit more than he did. Maybe we've left Serkin a little bit isolated as well. You'd think one of the midfielders would step in. I think Dan Neil plays the other side. You'd like to think whoever was in midfield, I think it was Michu a lot of the game. Pritchard came and sat in. You want to think maybe there's a bit more protection from them, but it's just one of them. And we said it earlier. The management could easily react to it, and I don't know why you need to bring Gooch off when he played at left back, and because I think Gooch probably deals with him pace wise as well. And just double up on him like teams do with Clark, Roberts, and Ahmad, whoever's playing that wide. So it's one of those frustrating things. But like you say, we're Sunderland and we like to do it the hard way. If we're winning, let's give the opposition a bit of a chance, and yeah, that's what we did.
We did, but luckily it didn't come to anything because Sunderland held on, and it is a win. It's 3 points, and moving on to what is probably the most important part of that result is the table now, because Sunderland are up to 9th and moving above Norwich, who of course were on the receiving end of a hammering last night, 5-1 away to Middlesbrough. So Sunderland go above them on goal difference, same games played and same points, just one better goal difference. Preston above Sunderland on 62 points. Blackburn above Sunderland on 62 points. Coventry above Sunderland on 62 points. And then a couple of teams 1 point or 2 points behind us as well. So ultimately we are 1 point off the playoffs. But at the same time, it is incredibly, stressfully tight at the top.
Yes, it's very tight. And, we were saying after the Cardiff game. It's whoever's going to put that run together. Can it be us? I don't see any reason why not. But there's obviously plenty of teams in there who will fancy their chance as well. You always get one team that sort of steamrolls from sort of 10th position.
Yeah.
And personally, my view is that the club are not really. Well, I wouldn't say not, but pushing for it. But they'd probably be happy to consolidate in there, and we go again next season. But if I was Tony Mowbray, I'd put the gauntlet down to the players and just say, we're in with a shout. Go and prove yourselves. To me, that's all I need to be told. And
it's like people say as well, and I think I've said it a few times, you will never, ever, ever in football, especially in the Championship, get a season where you can pick and choose where, we want to get promoted this season, we will get promoted this season. If you get the chance, you're going to take it. And people say we aren't ready for the Premier League, we're going to get hammered, we'll finish bottom, we'll get relegated, and this, that, and the other. But if you look at the teams around us, for example, Blackburn, Coventry, Millwall, Preston. If you asked fans of their clubs as well, I think a lot of them would say the same, that they don't really think they have the squad for the Premier League. But with the right investment, a bit of momentum, anything can happen. And you look at some of the teams that have done it in the past. I think Sheffield United, they finished just outside Europe one season. Brentford, albeit obviously their squad is a lot stronger than ours was at the season they got promoted. But again, look what they're doing. They're challenging for Europe. So if Sunderland were to get promoted, it shouldn't really be a case of we're not ready for it yet. It's going to be good experience for the players that have never played there before. Young players, all the money that comes with it. I think you get 100 million for promotion, and then obviously the parachute payments that follow. If you have the chance to go for it, go for it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd probably say that we're, in terms of recruitment and those types of things, we're in a very, very healthy, situation. And I think we've proved against Fulham, sort of twice, who are what we'd call a decent Premier League team, that we can go toe to toe with them. We've obviously had the injuries and stuff, but with the right investment, and maybe if you're picking up the players that we are picking up, some of them are still a bit raw. Obviously, there'd have to be investment, but that's what comes of it. Unfortunately, there can always be that expectation of, well, there's no expectation in Premier League. We let's see how we fare. Same as this league. There was no. Obviously, we want to do well, but it was more, let's just consolidate, and it'd be the same in the Premier League, and anything's a bonus. Obviously, it's a long shot for us to get there, but if we did, like you said, we can't pick and choose. It'd be amazing if we did go up. There'd be a bit more financial stability because we're not rushing out and spending sort of top money and having to pay players an extra 10, 20 grand, to get them to come here. People come here because they want to come here and they want to play football. We've changed course, and it is working. But obviously, I think we have to be grounded a little bit and think, let's just see how this goes. But yeah, I'll take another trip to Wembley, any day.
Yeah. And just very quickly as well, I think someone said it in the chat that we're in as well. It would just be nice to have a trip to Wembley where no one's I don't want to say no one's bothered. If Sunderland get to a playoff final, everyone's going to want to win, and people will be devastated if we lose. But there's no expectation for Sunderland to get into the playoffs, and then to win the playoffs. And that's the first time in the last 5 years that there's been no expectation whatsoever, and just enjoy what happens.
Yeah, exactly. The pressure's off. How many years in the Premier League did we play with that pressure of every season? Every single one. And even when we got relegated to the Championship, the pressure, we just couldn't handle it, down to League One, which is why we stayed there for so long. We just had players and managers who just couldn't handle the pressure. Now we've got ourselves to a decent state where there's positive pressure to go out and play well, but we're not under any pressure as, right, we must get promoted, we must get to Wembley, we must get to the Premier League. There isn't that pressure there now. It's, I think that's the same with the manager. It's the freedom. Go out and play. Go out and prove to yourself. If I'm sure a lot of these players will be on massive contracts in terms of, if you get promoted, we'll say Jack Clark's on, I don't know, 10 grand a week. I'm sure if we get promoted to the Premier League, there'll be a clause or something like that says, well, you go up to 25, you go up to 30. And that's the incentive for these players. That's what they want. They want to grow. They want to grow, obviously, in football terms and financial terms. That's the way of the world. So there's your incentive. Go out, prove yourself. And if you do prove yourself, Sunderland as a club are in a massive, positive state. and it's taken a while.
It's not just that as well though, because you look at some of the players and the recruitment that Sunderland have. Jack Clark's not going to stay at Sunderland forever. Ahmad's obviously he's not going to stay here forever. Michu, Sunderland have the option to buy him in the summer, but for a player that is growing every week and getting better every week, he's probably not going to be here forever. And it's one of them seasons where if you are a Jack Clark who's, he's been at Leeds, got a big move to Tottenham, didn't work out, went on loan to a couple of clubs, didn't work out. If you want to prove that you're good enough for the Championship, you will get a bigger move in the future as well.
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's the incentive. If good things are only going to come if you're playing really, really well. And like we say, then comes the bigger clubs, the more financial. I think just about every one of our players has been linked with a Premier League team.
Yeah.
There's countless ones, and obviously Ahmad going back to Man United. These we're not just talking about other Championship teams around us or lower than us. We're talking sort of Premier League teams. Proper elite football, the highest in this country. So again, there's your incentive, and I've been happy. Let's say happy. The model has always been, if people are always for sale, and that's no different now. And it doesn't matter if it's Patterson or Dan Neil, which again, I'll be sad to see, but ultimately if it benefits the club and the long-term project, say we get a £20 million bid for Patterson, for instance, or Dan Neil, and we do sell him, I'll be gutted. But if it goes back in and it, provides
5 Dan Neils for 20 million.
You're going to get one.
But that is the recruitment, isn't it? People will look at and think, Dan Ballard, for example, he's, £25 million player, £30 million player easily. And, if you sell him for that, there'll be some people think, right, we could have got more. But if you go back to when we first got him, we signed him for £2.5 million. With the recruitment team that we have and the scouting that we have, I think there was something earlier this week or maybe last week saying that Stuart Harvey was out in a different continent scouting for players. You could find another 2 or 3 Dan Ballards for the same price as to what you've just sold one of them for. And that's ultimately what, Sunderland are probably trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. We've got a lot of French under 21 kids. How good is the French, set up? They win World Cups, left, right and centre with their, youth teams. And, we're getting some fantastic players. And ultimately there's going to be, it'll probably be this summer, 1 or 2, where big clubs do come calling. You have to say, thanks for all you've done, and we'll sell you on. But I'd still say we're sort of still run on a tight, structure. Imagine if that structure's just pushed to the, to the next level slightly. Who can you then get? And you can point to, you can go to teams and go, well, look at this player. A lot of players will have like buybacks, like Sirkin at Tottenham and those types of things. So they'll, we still tend to benefit financially. Even if those types of things happen, that's the sort of things that you want to happen going forward. Yeah.
Well, just before we look ahead to the next game, very, very briefly, 3 of the best, off you go.
But today I will go for, I think I'd have to go for Trey Hume as one. Thought he was very, very good again at the back with Bart, and obviously he scored. Right place, right time. Who else? Probably a quiet mention for Dan Neil in the middle. Again, he's played 90 minutes. He plays every week, never comes off. Just does simple things well, tidies up, made some good blocks. And third and foremost would probably be Ahmad. Just a quality footballer and enjoy him for the next 5 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever it is.
6, if you include the playoffs.
6 weeks, good shout, yes. Well, stay if we win the playoffs. So, yeah, enjoy
exactly.
6
next
weeks.
Few months. Next game, Tuesday, another home game, this time against Huddersfield, who at the minute are 19th, but it's very deceiving because I think they are on a 5-game unbeaten streak. I could be completely wrong on that, but obviously Neil Warnock has went in there, took the job after their previous manager got sacked. I want to say Carlos Corberan, but I wasn't sure. Was it him?
Yeah, I think so.
It might have been him, I'm not sure if it was. But Neil Warnock's took over, and since he's took over, they have been in good form. So the table for this one is probably not something to look at. But like I said, it's another home game. It's another game that Sunderland absolutely have to win if playoffs are to be achieved. And, there'll be a few more games here and there that will also affect what happens. But predictions for that game on Tuesday?
I think you've got to go home win. I'll take. I always say it, I'll take any win, but I'll go 2-0 Sunderland.
2-0.
They did lose. Yeah, they did. Huddersfield did lose to Swansea today, so maybe they're obviously my Huddersfield knowledge isn't that great. So I would assume that they're better at home. I'd be more worried if we were playing them away, even though we're decent away. But at home, I think you've got to expect them to come and just sit in. But I think we've got the quality to break them down.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, that, because I can't actually remember when our last home clean sheet was.
No, me
It was
neither.
probably back at Reading, I
Probably
think.
Blackburn, yeah.
I think that was February, so a couple of months since our last clean sheet at home. But there's going to be one that happens soon, and hopefully it is on Tuesday, which, like I said, is at home to Huddersfield. We'll get something out during the week to talk about that, and then again look ahead to Saturday's game, which off the top of my head I have no idea who it is, but that doesn't matter this time because one game at a time. Next one is Huddersfield, but until then we will see you later.
That's all, folks.